Hello and good morning, my beautiful intuitive butterflies. How is everyone this week? It is Monday morning, August the 15th, 2022, and welcome to this week's card reading. This week, we are going to select 2 cards from each of 3 decks. I'm going to jump right in here this week. So this week, we're going to select 2 cards from each of 3 decks and give you a reading that will carry you through from now until next Monday morning. As a bonus today, at the very end, I have been asked to use a deck that isn't commonly used anymore, but I have been asked by several people to do a life purpose reading. At this time, as a lot of us are starting to come out of the haze and days from the pandemic, a lot has changed. There's a lot of career choices being made right now. A lot of people were laid off, or even if they weren't, they had an opportunity to work from home during the pandemic and really dig deep and make some exploration, some self-exploration deep into their own psyche to determine exactly where they wanted to be and what they wanted to be doing with their lives. So I have been asked to pull out my life purpose cards, which I don't use very often. And so that will be a bonus reading at the end of today. So let's jump right in. I already have a white candle lit today in order to call in some good spirits, to call in the creator, to call in the angels, the ancestors, and the animals to help us today. We are also going to ground ourselves through our feet and bring up the energy of Mother Earth. I'm excited today because I have some sage here that I'm going to light. This sage was from my garden that I grew in Canada, and I came across it in a box that I was recently unpacking. So let's wave this around. Oh, nothing like the scent of sage that you've grown yourself. So cleanse and clear all of our cards today. Cleanse and clear ourselves and clear our electronics. All right, we're going to set that over there and hope that we don't set off any fire alarms today. All right, today we are going to have pile number 1. Please take a moment, tap into what I'm saying right now and make your choice. If you are called towards pile number 1 for this week, pile number 1, we are going to use the Animal Tarot. All right, just to give you a little sample of the Animal Tarot. If you are called to the Animal Tarot and pile number 1 this week, second pile this week, we are going to use Dr. Stephen D. Farmer's Messages from the Spirits of Nature. Okay, so take a moment, see if you are called or pulled towards our pile number 2, which will be this deck this week. And deck number 3, pile number 3 this week will be Kyle Gray's Angels and Ancestor cards, which I'm sure some of you are familiar with. All right, so take a moment, go deep within and decide if you are pile number 1, pile number 2, or pile number 3. And we're just going to move the other decks off to the side while we're doing each reading here. And just a reminder, if you don't catch this video first thing on a Monday morning, you can always watch it throughout the week, either from my Facebook page, Intuitive Butterfly, or from my webpage, intuitivebutterfly.com. Also, this is a general reading, so some of what I say will resonate deeply with some of you, and some of it maybe not. Or maybe you were distracted while I was presenting the different piles, and perhaps You know, if you picked pile number 1 and it doesn't resonate with you, try watching the readings from the other piles, and perhaps those will resonate with you. Okay, I do have 2 cards that have jumped out at me, so let's dive in. For those of you that picked pile number 1 this week, you have the painted turtle. Faith and efforts are being rewarded this week. Okay. So the turtle, typically in traditional North American indigenous beliefs, we are on Turtle Island, right? Mother Earth is represented as a turtle for a lot of indigenous people, which means that this week, if you ascribe or subscribe to any of those beliefs, this week is an opportunity for you to tap into the energy of Mother Earth, really get yourself grounded. Also, this card in the traditional tarot is representative of the 6 of fire or the 6 of wands. Anytime we are in the wands or in the fire suit of the tarot, it is a call to action. It is a call to actually integrate the practice into our daily lives. So faith and efforts are being rewarded. This card for you this week is an indication that the work that you've been doing for the past several weeks or several months is actually starting to be rewarded. The meditations that maybe you put into place, that, you know, your practice of meditation, your practice of yoga, your practice of eating a more healthy diet, any of these things that you chose to put into place recently are now being rewarded. You're starting to feel better. Your thoughts and your intuition are more clear if your intention was to that end. If your intention was to eat a more healthy diet, then you're actually starting to feel physically better. If your intention perhaps was to get better sleep, and you've actually been putting that into practice over the last several weeks, that is being rewarded right now, which is a call for you to continue to put those practices in place as you go forward this week. The second card that jumped out was the 10 of Cups. Leaps of happiness. This is a grasshopper. When the grasshopper comes into our lives, it's an indication that there's big leaps and bounds that are going to start to make themselves known. You know, a lot of the changes that happen when we start a metaphysical practice, if we start meditation, if we start yoga, if we start any of those things, a lot of the changes that happen for us are quite subtle. And for that reason, a lot of people tend to walk away from it because they're just not seeing things change quickly enough for them. This week is letting you know that those changes are coming to fruition, right? That's what the grasshopper is bringing to us. It's showing us that in the initial days of a meditation practice, for example, let's just use meditation as an example. In the initial days of a meditative practice, we're not going to notice anything. In fact, a lot of us, because we're so tired in our day-to-day lives, will actually just fall asleep during a meditation. Typically, for the first 8 to 10 days that people decide that they're going to go into a deep meditative practice, they fall asleep. Changes are still happening in their bodies, in their minds, in their psyches, in their emotions. All of this is starting to rebalance them as a human, but they're not seeing that yet. And what this card is telling people is that if you decided to bring in a new practice, you're now reaping those rewards this week, right? You're being rewarded, and there's further leaps of happiness that will continue to happen as you continue your practice. The other thing is that the Six of Wands represents fire and action. The grasshopper is the Ten of Cups. It represents water. Water flows, right? If you look at the beautiful river as it flows past, or a little creek that's flowing by, even if you take a glass of water and pour one glass of water into another glass of water, think about the water just flowing, right? That is what is coming up for me for each of you that picked this, is that you've been in this action mode, putting all of these new practices into place. And now this second card that's come up for you is an indication that you will continue it, but rather than it feeling like it needs to be actioned all the time, it's going to feel more like it's a flow, like it's a part of your life now. The card that's on the bottom of this deck, the shadow this week, is the gorilla, strength, nobility, and generosity. This is the King of Pentacles, the King of Earth. This card for you this week is telling you that your shadow is your strength and your generosity. Perhaps what's been happening is, as you've been integrating these new practices, as you've been getting more grounded, as you've been growing in leaps and bounds, you have been potentially neglecting the strength that these new practices are actually building into your life. Alternatively, as the shadow, it could be, and this happens to a lot of people as they start to develop spiritually, they go the opposite way. Yeah, that's more of what I'm picking up, that this shadow card for you this week really isn't a nice one. What it's telling me is that as you've begun to develop your faith, your intuition, your spiritual gifts, there's been perhaps a little bit of arrogance. I mean, the gorilla really does represent, they are the king of their mountain, so to speak. And so there is an arrogance that can come along with that. There is a strength that comes along with that. But if that strength and that arrogance isn't used the right way, it can become a shadow, and it can really, really be detrimental to what you are trying to develop, right? If what you're trying to develop is a deeper connection to Mother Earth, a deeper connection to other human beings, if you really want to experience those leaps of happiness, as your first two cards indicate, then what you can't have as your shadow is strength and arrogance from the gorilla. So how do we bring about a shadow and prevent it from becoming something that can be ugly? We bring it into the light, right? We shine light on it. So each time we feel like, oh, I'm being a little bit arrogant or judgy, or perhaps I feel like I'm being, forceful. If we shine the light on that and actually caution ourselves and go, hey, was I coming from a place of arrogance? Then that shadow tends to disappear, right? Look, there's nothing wrong with being strong. Absolutely nothing. I fully encourage people to be strong. But there is something wrong when that strength comes from that place of arrogance, right? And one of the things that this card says on it is nobility, right? Unfortunately, nobility has a tendency to have an air of arrogance about it, right? Oh, I'm better than you because I come from the nobility. That is what you are being cautioned against as your spiritual practice grows. You are being cautioned against that air of arrogance this week. So just watch for it. You know, if you notice it coming in, shine that light on it and say, ah, right, I need to come from a place of authenticity, not from a place of arrogance. I need to come from a place of understanding, not coming from that place where I feel like I'm in the nobility. Right? So thank you for watching. Those who selected pile number 1, that is your reading for this week. That is what you are looking forward to. Your faith and your efforts are being rewarded. You have leaps of happiness, but you are also cautioned against any aspects of arrogance which may be coming in for you this week. Okay. Moving along, to those of you who selected pile number 2, we're going to use this deck this week. All right, for those, what messages do we have this week? All right, that card doesn't really want to go back in. The apple tree, abundance. Yay! For those of you who selected pile number 2 this week, this is your card. The apple tree. Look at the number of apples, not only in the basket, the number of apples on the ground, but the number of apples on the tree. This card, for those of you that selected pile number 2, is letting you know that there is abundance all around you every single day. You just have to look for it. Also, being a tree, you're being called to stay grounded this week. I just want to bring that up as well. Yeah, so when we live in a place of scarcity, we may not recognize the abundance that is in fact all around us. So this week, those of you that selected pile number 2 are being asked to pay attention to the abundance that's all around you. You know, and this calls into your spiritual practice of gratitude. There needs to be gratitude. Abundance and gratitude go hand in hand. You really can't have one without the other. So for those of you that selected pile number 2 this week and selected this particular deck, or the reading from this particular deck this week, I want to remind you to pay attention to, you have a roof over your head. When it rains, you're dry. You have enough food to sustain your body this week. You have somewhere to lay your head and sleep. It may not be perfect for everyone, but you still have those things. And when you practice gratitude for what you have already in your life, more good things will actually start to come in for you. If you are in a place this week of practicing, well, I have a fridge full of food, but I really don't want to eat any of it. You're not actually coming from that place of abundance, right? You're sending that message out to the world that I'm ungrateful. That despite the fact that you've sent me all of these beautiful apples from the apple tree, I don't want to eat any apples this week. Recognize and acknowledge what you have this week. Practice that gratitude this week. Acknowledge what you have. One of the things that I was taught when I became a hypnotherapist was, as I was falling asleep each night, I was told to do a 5 or a 10 practice. And count them on our fingers. So 5 fingers or 10 fingers. And as you're falling asleep, repeat to yourself, I am grateful for the abundance in my life. There's one. I am grateful for the food in my belly as I fall asleep tonight. There's 2. I am grateful for the fact that I have a bed to sleep in tonight. There's 3. Look how easy it is to practice that gratitude. And when you practice that gratitude, you will, I guarantee it, you will bring more abundance into your life. If, however, you're practicing your gratitude of, oh, yeah, I have a bed to sleep in tonight. Whoopee. If you are practicing like that, trust me, you're not going to be bringing more of this beautiful apple tree into your life, right? Really, really feel the gratitude. And that's going to encourage abundance. Express compassion this week. That will also bring up more abundance into your life. You know, when you have that friend, we all have a friend who constantly has drama, constantly has negativity going on around them. It's hard to always express compassion for someone like that. I encourage you this week to send compassion out to that person. You don't know what they've been experiencing. When you send compassion out to that person, you are creating more abundance in your own life, because as you send compassion out to someone else, you are opening the door for someone else to send you compassion when you have something that's gone on in your life that's perhaps not optimal. All right. So what is your shadow this week for those of you that selected pile number 2? On the bottom this week, we have renewal and rain. Okay. Not sure if that's actually coming into focus. Hopefully it's coming into focus. That is actually a really, really beautiful card. But being that it's in your shadow position this week, coming from the renewal standpoint, or the renewal perspective, you're being cautioned this week to pay attention to self-care. I also want to say that it's rain, so it represents water. And as I mentioned in the first reading, when water comes up anytime in an oracle card reading, in a tarot card reading, water represents going with the flow, being in flow, being in alignment with the energies that are around you. When you're not in alignment with the energies that are around you, you're going to bump up against things. So where am I going with this with regards to this being your shadow this week is that if you're not in alignment with the flow, you're not going to be renewing yourself. You're not going to be taking care of yourself. When you are not taking care of yourself and renewing yourself this week, then it's going to make it very difficult for you to be bringing abundance into your life. I hope that's making sense. It's making sense in my head, but I'm sensing that perhaps the message isn't coming through as being clear. So in order to bring abundance into your life this week, group number 2 or pile number 2, those of you that selected that pile, in order for you to bring abundance into your life this week, you need to be practicing gratitude and compassion. And in order to be able to do those things, in order to be able to express gratitude and compassion, you need to be renewing yourself. You need to be looking after yourself. You need to be going with the flow, acting like the rain that just flows. Water off a duck's back, right? Let things just flow past you. If you are not doing those things, then the abundance isn't going to be coming. So this week, I'm calling upon those of you that selected pile number 2 to practice gratitude, practice compassion, And as a shadow, remember to let things just flow off of you, like the rain flows off of you if you stand out in the rain. Bring renewal into your own life using water. The image that's come up for me several times since I started this reading for you this week is self-care, which includes water this week, whether that means going to a hot springs, standing out in a rainstorm, splashing through some puddles, or taking a long, hot bath and just relaxing and letting things just be taken away. The image that I just had coming up was sitting in a bathtub using salts, like a Himalayan salt or Dead Sea salts, anything like that, and allowing the salts to just pull the negativity out of you, to pull judgment out of you so that you can have the compassion and gratitude that you need in order to bring the abundance into your life. And as I've said before, we want to bring our shadows into the light. And one of the best ways to do that is to shine the light on our shadows. One of the ways we can do that is to have some fun with it. So if you're in an area this week that's going to experience some rain, have fun with the rain. Go out and splash through a couple of puddles. If you see a puddle on the road, and I'm not talking, in those areas where you've got this much water and it's a dangerous flood. I'm talking, when you see a little puddle, look around. Make sure there's nobody standing on the curb and drive your car really fast through the puddle and splash. Have some fun with the rain this week, because that's going to bring some renewal to you. So I'm going to leave that with you. Have some fun with your rain this week. Have some fun with some water. Allow the water in order to be able to pull negativity out of you. That's your shadow this week. And then enjoy the abundance. Thank you. All right, moving on to those of you that selected pile number 3 this week, which is Kyle Gray's Angels and Ancestors cards. All right, Angels and Ancestors, we need a card on top for the overall theme of this week, and we need a card on the bottom for shadow. Where are we going with this? All right. Oh, there we go. We've got one card. I don't know if any of you can see this, but you can see how there's one card that's kind of flipped lopsided here. That's going to be your card this week. Shapeshifter, transform and unveil your gifts. For those of you that selected pile number 3 this week, this is your card. You have the Shapeshifter card. When this card comes up, it is an indication that there are huge changes and huge shifts happening in your life this week. Some of those changes and shifts may feel uncomfortable. I'm just going to give you the heads up that that's coming in really, really strong for me this week. That this week may be uncomfortable for some of you. Now, we just experienced a supermoon. The last supermoon of 2022. It happened a couple of days ago. I can tell you it was powerful. I got knocked flat for almost 48 hours with a migraine, and I am still experiencing the side effects of it. It feels like I was actually hit by something in the back of my head. And I asked my son to check it for me. And I actually have a bruise and a lump on the back of my head. That's how powerful this most recent moon was. It really, really affected people. Now, having said that, leading up to full moons, for me personally, I get super, super motivated. I'm totally into whatever I'm doing, almost to my detriment. But after the full moon has passed, as the moon starts to wane, I actually do a whole, oh my God. And I get really unmotivated. And almost lazy. Now, I've talked to some of my friends and associates also in the psychic realm who work in the psychic realm, work with their spirits, spirit guides. And what they've told me is they actually experience the complete opposite, that after a full moon, they feel really motivated, but leading up to a full moon, they have no motivation at all. So watch yourself this week, those of you that selected pile number 3. Where I'm going with this is that for some people leading up to a full moon, they feel very empowered and motivated. And for others, they feel very uncomfortable. Coming out of a full moon, it's the exact opposite. So watch yourselves this week. But what I'm picking up is that for many of you that selected pile number 3, this week is going to feel uncomfortable as the power of the full moon begins to subside. And as the power of the moon wanes this week, it is going to be uncomfortable for some of you because you are transforming this week, right? We all know that the moon influences us. The moon influences water. We are made up of water. And so there is transformation for you this week, those of you that picked pile number 3. But transformation can't always be comfortable. But having said that, forewarned is forearmed, which means that if you recognize that this transformation that you're currently going through, which may be feeling a little uncomfortable, is something that you manifested. We are exactly where we are in our lives because of the decisions that we have made. So those of you that selected pile number 3, if you set the intention to make some really, really drastic transformations and changes in your life, if you set those intentions a month ago, 6 weeks ago, 6 months ago, this card is telling you that a lot of that transformation is happening right now. It's happening this week, but for me, intuitively, the message that I'm getting to tell you is that you chose this. You decided you wanted to have this transformation, but it is going to be a little bit uncomfortable this week. Having said that, that transformation will also unveil your gifts. For some of you, those gifts are going to be more earthbound. That's what the wolf is representing on this card. It's going to be more earthly, more grounded. And for others, the hawk that it's on this card represents that some of the transformation that you're going to experience is just going to be mind expanding, based in the air and in the ether. So watch for that. Pay attention to what is transpiring and what you're being called more towards this week. There will be transformation. There will be the unveiling of some gifts this week. Pay close attention to your meditation practice this week. I do feel that there's going to be there's going to be something revealed to many of you this week, either in your dreams or in your meditations. And it's going to be really, really important. So the shadow for you this week, follow the voice of your soul, the star ancestor. This is your shadow this week. This is an indication that with all of the transformation that you've called in, that you've decided that you want to manifest in your life, you may have lost touch with the true voice of your ancestors, with the true calling that you have. You haven't been listening to the voice of your soul. So sometimes what can happen when we're having a spiritual awakening, when we've decided that we're going to manifest a huge transformation in ourselves, we lose touch with our soul calling, with what we're truly meant to be doing, right? Because we become so enamored with the change and the transformation. We become so involved with that transformation, we lose touch with our soul and our soul calling. And that's what your shadow is this week. So as this transformation is happening for you this week, as this, and this makes perfect sense too, why I was picking up the discomfort for you this week, which is kind of unusual. I mean, this is supposed to be your positive card, but I kept picking up discomfort. The reason I'm picking up that discomfort for you this week is that it's not just about the transformation. It's that in some ways you have lost your way, you've lost your path, you've lost that connection with the voice of your soul and what your true path is going to be. So that's going to be your work this week. Those of you that selected pile number 3, your work this week is to connect and reintegrate the voice of your soul with the transformation and the gifts that you are trying to bring about and manifest. That's your work this week. And that kind of work can truly make you feel a little squirmy, a little uncomfortable in your skin. But trust me when I tell you that it is so worth it. Because when you integrate these two, when you integrate new gifts and new transformation in with the true calling and the voice of your soul, it's going to be beautiful and it's going to be amazing. All right, so very, very quickly, I have had a number of people ask me to pull out my life purpose oracle cards and do just a really quick reading. So what I'm going to do is, here is the deck. I am going to pull 3 cards. Card number 1, card number 2, card number 3. I'm sorry, I would get more creative and pull out some crystals and some other things, but they're still packed in a box. And I'm really struggling with unpacking and settling. That's my own lesson right now this week. So I'm going to pull 3 cards, sit for a moment, and choose whether you are going to be drawn to card number 1 as your life purpose, card number 2 as your life purpose, or card number 3. And this is going to be relatively quick. All right. We need 3 cards. There's 3 cards. All right. I really feel like that one belongs over there. 3 cards. Okay. I feel like those are the correct order. Okay. Those of you that were drawn to pile number 1, life purpose. Now, this is not written in stone. This is guidance. This is kind of as a hint. And, you know, for example, if teacher comes up, it doesn't necessarily mean going and being that staunch school teacher that you had back in grade 2, right? It means that you're meant to be a teacher. But there are many different ways that a teacher can come into our lives. Okay, so pile number 1, builder. Your innate ability to build and create brings you a deep sense of accomplishment. Okay, so for those of you that were drawn to number 1 with regards to the life purpose cards, you're being guided towards being a builder. Now, being a builder doesn't necessarily mean hammer and nails and building buildings. It can also mean building a website, building a life for other people, perhaps volunteering and building something in a foreign country. Any of those things are an indication that you're being called towards building something. A builder as well can also be a teacher of sorts when you build up the hopes and dreams for others. Okay, but you do have an ability, those of you that were drawn towards number 1, you have an ability to build and create. And when you do that, it gives you that deep sense of accomplishment. Like it's what you were meant to do and called to do. Those of you that chose number 2 with regards to the life purpose cards. Flowers. Working with flowers opens your heart and brings blessings to others through your life purpose. Okay. So for those of you that chose this, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to earn every penny that you're ever going to make from this day forward with flowers, but it is asking you and calling you to integrate flowers into your life and into your lifestyle and into whatever it is you're doing. You know, if your choice is to be a cake decorator or a baker, for example, integrate some flowers into what you're doing. Decorate what you're doing with flowers. If you are currently working as a builder, for example, and yet you got the flowers card, perhaps integrating some decor of flowers in whatever it is that you're building. You know, that's how you can integrate that one in. And for those of you that picked number 3, working with crystals, your connection to crystals and gemstones is a channel for energy healing. So those of you that selected number 3 with regards to the life purpose cards, you're being called to work with crystals and stones, whether that be in the esoteric and working with the energies of crystals and stones, or whether that means that you're being called to work with as a geologist and begin to study the rocks and stones of Mother Earth and the different layers and so on. Anything that involves working with rocks and stones and crystals is what you're being called towards. Now, like I said, these cards are not written in stone. It doesn't mean that this is what you're meant to do for the rest of your life, but it definitely means in the short term, really sit down and explore one of these aspects if you chose to even be involved in this part of the reading. Really explore them this week. I want to say over the next 5 to 6 weeks, explore these. If they don't resonate with you in 4 or 5 weeks, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But you never know until you actually open up the door of exploration what you might be being drawn towards. Something new, something unexpected. So with that, I'm going to leave off. Thank you so much for joining me this week. Enjoy your week. I will be back next Monday. Have a beautiful week.